Interstellar Burst. This podcast is back to save the universe. I am Jason Bemis Lawrence. This is Before the Stream, my podcast. Welcome back to part 2 of this conversation with Jesse Marchant and Dan Goodwin about Radiohead's OK Computer. We recorded it in September 2020 during the making of Jesse Marchant's 5th full-length studio album, Antelope Running, which is out June 25th, Friday, June 25th, a week away as of the release of this podcast. If you haven't heard part 1 of this conversation, you don't have to. I recommend it. We pick right up where that one ended. I introduced the album and the guys and the situation in that one, so I won't go too much back into that. But we were at the Isokon in Woodstock, Dan Goodwin's studio there. This is the last month he will be in that building, and I can't say enough how special that place and working with Dan there and everyone that I worked with there has been to me over the last almost decade, and I'm really gonna miss it. And I'm really grateful for all the opportunities I had to be there and to work with the great people that I worked with there. I'm excited for people to hear Antelope Running. I think it represents growth from Jesse, from myself, from the relationship that we all had working on a lot of Jesse's music at the Isokon. And I think it's something different from all of us, which is really exciting. I hope people listen to it and love it. At this point in the conversation, we had just taken a little break and are getting back into OK Computer. I'm sure Logan Cole, who was also there, was snoozing away in a room below us, or maybe watching some Real Housewives or something on his phone. Maybe just enjoying a chance to not listen to us for a little while until the next morning. While I have you here, if you have a moment while you're listening to just tap a 5-star or whichever star you think is the right rating for this podcast, maybe leave a little comment. I would really appreciate that. It helps get the podcast out to more people. I can also say that there will be more conversation coming between me and Jesse about Antelope Running. More on that soon. Here's part 2 of me and Jesse and Dan talking about Radiohead's OK Computer.
Electioneering, I think, was left over from the Bends, as far as I remember. Yeah.
I read
apparently they say that they don't think it fits, and I always thought it was fine. But
yeah, I do too. I had read that Lucky was actually even recorded earlier than the rest of the songs.
Huh.
I wonder if Electioneering was a song that they had and they recorded it with the rest of them, but Lucky was actually recorded in like 95, 96, and everything else was recorded in 97.
Oh, weird.
Huh.
Which makes some sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
It fits well, but I can hear how...
I could see it being recorded at the same time as Street Spirit, those
right,
kinds.
Right. I remember a friend in college that I played in bands with saying, listening to Lucky, very specific memory, but there's kind of a breakdown towards the end of that song, and it's just guitar, and it's the part where it goes boom, and him being like, that's the most indie rock part in any Radiohead song. And I couldn't quite get my head around it, but then I guess the other bands that we were listening to had that. There's something about that, the rhythm of that guitar part.
I like when that flanged, like upswept guitar chord comes in.
Oh, I know.
It's so gratifying.
There's so many extra sounds. That seems like part of their like jump in soundscape from something like the Bends to this, or obviously the first 2 records, to this, like in we were talking about Paranoid Android, but also Subterranean Homesick Alien. There's like all those sounds that it's almost like spaceship sounds.
Yeah.
Which I wondered, like, oh, that's never struck me as on the nose when I was listening on the way up here in the car. It never struck me as on the nose, but he's singing about aliens looking down on us, and there's this sort of like
Right, it could be construed as corny.
I mean, a little bit, but I don't hear it that way.
I guess actually you made me think that there's another record that I should mention in terms of the stark changes in things is Ziggy Stardust. Like clearly has the similar things.
Yeah, exactly.
Of like the stark changes in world. David Bowie's a chameleon that could probably be likened to Radiohead in the same way, you know? And open, always open.
Right.
Also took far out concepts and made pop songs with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And always had really strange collaborators, like Robert Fripp. It's a big one, you know, like Fripp was never a pop star. The only song that King Crimson ever had that was anywhere near a hit was like, you know, In the Court of the Crimson King. And to like think of all the stuff that he played on like Heroes and Low and all that stuff. Yeah, so he was clearly interested in strange ways of making pop music.
So Airbag, we've already discussed that introduction. It feels like, I mean, it's one of my favorite songs, I think, just of theirs, of all time. That introduction, I mean, it's just an iconic track one, I think. But not to give away trade secrets or anything, but like, how do you make a guitar that, and I know there's strings and stuff, but how can you make something sound so huge?
Well, I think...
It's just super compressed with a lot of overdrive.
Yeah, I was thinking for a second that there was a second thing behind it, but my impression is that, yeah, it's a small amp just driven to bazillion, you know, but mic'd actually probably fairly far away. Not in a live room, but just fairly far away and just compressed to shit.
Yeah.
So that every note is like a sponge, you know, it's like, and that's what it feels like the pick attack excites the compressor and then it becomes a sponge and contracts. But so in between every note, it like contracts quickly after the pick and then it lets go and then contracts again. And it just creates this tension where your shoulders tighten up. And but also part of like that sound isn't as effective without the things behind it that are making like the bells.
Yeah, they have sleigh bells in there.
Yeah, the sleigh bells, and then that clean guitar that's doing the arpeggio thing behind it. That stuff is what also makes that thing really.
Yeah, because if they had opened a drive with that guitar, it would not be very interesting.
Yeah, it would just be a distorted guitar.
Yeah.
Right. That no. I didn't even really hear that as a guitar early on. Like it just seemed like there's something about
That's
it.
probably Ed, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I think there's a whammy pedal on it. I think that was like their first foray into whammy pedal guitar. The whammy thing, the octave, because it has that sparkly, spacey quality.
It's just doing such a specific thing. Maybe at the time I didn't even think of, like I thought of guitars either like playing a solo or a melody or they're playing a foundational strummy thing. And so it just from an arrangement standpoint, it seems so interesting that there's so many moments like that.
My favorite thing about that recording is the way when it opens into the verse, there's this thing that happens, and I'd have to hear it again to know what it is doing it, but it's like, you know, people often explain like, oh, I want this section to like just jettison.
Yeah.
But even though you're going into a verse and the impulse is to kind of retreat and pull back, it does this thing.
Yeah.
It just like
Send off.
Yeah, it sends you off,
Yeah.
and it's like almost like I always feel like it's a little space pod just coming out of the thing.
Yeah.
And this thing that happens, which happens so infrequently in music, and I love when it happens with that feeling of zero gravity, where you're just waiting to be collected by the planet, you know. And like in that verse, you get shot off into space, and then it starts to settle, and you feel this feeling like you're coming down through the clouds, down to Terra.
I totally agree.
Oh, it's
and then
so
you touch ground halfway through the verse.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing.
It's
and I'm
amazingly
trying to hear in
powerful.
my head of how they achieve that.
It's like a reverb tail. But it's something really. I don't even know that it was probably even a specific choice per se.
Yeah, it's just how the arrangement does its work.
Yeah. It was like an accident of the arrangement, and it's just so brilliantly done. Where it is one of the great openings of a record, and I actually forgot about it until you just mentioned it. How good it is, because you actually get let go, and then like a slingshot, and then you land in the most perfect way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
also one of the best bass lines of all time.
Oh,
yes, the interaction.
That was the song that turned me on to Colin. I mean, that's the cool thing about Radiohead, is that every member is one of my favorite musicians too. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of times where I've been making recordings. I'm like, fuck, if Colin Greenwood was here, that'd be so great. You know,
right.
Just the way he plays, because he does those starts and stops, and then he sits out long sections, and then all of a sudden he comes back in and he plays a few notes, and they're always the right notes, and then he'll ride out for a part where it makes a lot of sense. He's busy in the right ways, and then he's so sparse in other ways. He's really a sensitive, careful player. Yeah, and I mean that song. I mean, it showcases a lot of things, but for me particularly, it showcases that. Yeah. Because that's what I remember a lot when I think of the song.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the breakdown too, like sometimes it lands on a different beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that interaction between bass and drums.
It's cool.
Changed something for me. It made me want to do that kind of thing whenever possible with the bass.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
I remember, it's 97, so I was 20 when this record came out, and I was engineering. I was a bona fide engineer. And I do remember when this record came out, hearing those filtered drums, that thing, you know, and wondering what the fuck it was. And it turned out to be heavy use of this thing called a Mutronics mutator.
Oh, yeah.
And I bought one. I bought one like a month later, and I used it ad infinitum for like a year. And I finally was like, the only way I'm going to stop doing this is if I sell it.
Did it give you that sound?
Oh yeah, I mean,
it did. That was the sound. You
but
just
it was
had to
so.
plug it in.
It had become so. There was no way you could use it without it being Radiohead.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was just like, I loved it, and I loved what it. I think what ended up happening was I used it a bunch, but I ended up using it to get me another place. So it served a good purpose.
Yeah.
But I always found that when it got to the place that was Radiohead, I had to get away from it because it was too clearly, it was so tied indelibly to Radiohead that I could never, it's almost like that Ennio Morricone guitar. Like you can't play an A minor with tremolo and a whammy bar, a thin, with
or
spring
pluck,
reverb.
or pluck notes
or
with
pluck
tremolo.
Bass. Yeah, exactly.
And then you're in.
Without evoking the spirit of Morricone,
Or Badalamenti.
Yeah, exactly. Vibes and guitar following each other.
Anytime anybody does a dong dong, like two notes with tremolo, heavy trem.
Totally. And so, but I was just thinking about that mutator as like, I totally tried to cop that shit for a good 6 months at least. And I remember buying it, and it was expensive. I saved up like, 3 or 4 months worth of session fees to buy this fucking thing. And then a year later I had to sell it.
Right. I mean, that's part of being a musician is I mean, it's like speaking a language. That's such a cliche at music school or whatever, but that's how we learn to speak. We imitate what we hear, and then we figure out how to do it ourselves, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I had this strange thing when I was that age of thinking that I was the peer of other people who were influencing me. And that I was immune to their influence because I was a peer.
Well, but I think there's validity in that, because if you don't believe that you're a peer of the people that are influencing you, you'll never become a fully realized artist.
Perhaps, yeah.
Because you need that confidence.
Right.
You need that sense of grandeur. Otherwise, you're constantly just looking up to people.
That's true. Yeah.
And then who are you?
Yeah, right.
So I relate to that, because I've always felt that a little bit too. But I always have a huge sense of admiration for artists that I think are way better than me. But I never really had that thing where I felt like, oh man, like they're way over there and I'm here.
Right.
Right.
So,
and then the more you learn about other artists is that they also, he bought that because he heard it somewhere else.
Sure, yeah.
Or maybe he invented how he used it. Who knows?
Right.
But they definitely bought something because somebody else was using it, right?
Yeah.
So like, then that's a self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah.
And
no, it's true.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. And that's why you have a fully realized career now, and that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, as you become more comfortable as an artist, then you do actually become the peer.
Yeah.
You just don't think about it like that.
You just aren't at that time.
Right.
But you will be.
Yeah.
And there's a sense that you know that.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was 20, I was like, oh yeah, these guys are my contemporaries. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm on that level. Whatever.
I'm on that level.
I think you need that confidence.
Give me a little time.
the confidence that Jesse's talking about, but also the humility to realize that you need to keep searching and keep growing and keep learning as well to actually become one of their
well,
peers.
that you're not there yet. I mean, you'd be delusional otherwise.
Right.
But every artist who becomes great is at some point not that great.
Yeah.
But they have a sense that they will be one day.
Yeah.
Every artist I know who's really, really great and independently minded has definitely some delusions of grandeur.
It's a chip on the shoulder, I think.
Yeah, it's something to prove.
It drives me to a degree.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that, tying it into the Radiohead thing, I can imagine that they have a similar sensibility, or at least maybe Johnny and Tom do.
Mm-hmm.
Like a chip on their shoulder where they do view themselves as peers of somebody brilliant, and
Absolutely.
or did. Yeah.
Absolutely. Every artist is insecure and
over-secure at the same time.
Over-secure at the same time, but every artist admires other artists and is intimidated by what they've done.
Yeah.
And even when you've done a lot, actually, specifically, I remember Tom York talking about doing the Bridge School benefit, and he was going to play... It's one of my favorite Neil Young songs, and I'm blanking on the title. The opening track on After the Gold Rush.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell Me Why? Is that it?
No, sorry. So it's the second track.
After the Gold Rush? The title track.
So it's After the Gold Rush, right?
Yeah.
Of course. He was going to play that song at Neil and his wife's the Bridge School benefit that they do annually. And I remember... I think it was an interview I think it was actually a video interview where he talked about meeting Neil Young, who is one of his heroes, it turns out, and that he was going to play that song. And Neil Young said, you should play it on the piano that I wrote on. It's over here. I got it here.
Wow.
But that he didn't really give him much of the time of day, and that it seemed like he didn't really know who Radiohead was, and he didn't really care. Of course, because Foo Fighters are better than Radiohead, and that's who Neil Young collaborates with. But he's just out of touch, I guess, And so it seemed like he didn't know who he was, and Tom York is telling the story in an interview, and you can tell he's feeling quite sheepish.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that, you know.
Yeah. Can we talk for a moment about how do you guys feel about the name Radiohead?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I remember having discussions with us about this with friends, because they were supposed to be called on a Friday, which was when they would rehearse, and it was just like a throwaway shitty band name. And apparently their manager, who I think might be the same one, told them that it was like a terrible name.
Yeah.
Which is like, I'm not usually for managers telling bands what to do, but
that was a good decision.
In that instance, it was like, yeah, that's a shitty name.
Yeah.
It's a Talking Heads song, Radiohead.
It's a lyric, I think.
Yeah, this is where my knowledge is limited. I don't remember where it came from.
This is the only place where my knowledge is limited. No, I think it is a lyric.
Did I say only?
No. I think it is a lyric. I could also be falling prey to not knowing enough, but I think it's a lyric.
Yeah.
I was wondering because I remember thinking back then that I thought the name Radiohead was kind of like, it's a fucking stupid name.
Yeah.
But I don't even think twice about it now.
No.
Because it's like it's a brand.
It's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how that happens. I've thought of that many times, that I didn't evaluate it that way, as the way I would if I was starting a band and then trying to think of the words as what they are with no meaning attached to them.
Yeah.
I think especially early on for me, a band name was already just infused with the band and the images and the songs for me, so I didn't really think about it that way.
Sure.
You mentioned the band name Jane's Addiction, Jesse, the other day, and I thought, oh, right, those are two words that mean other things. That's always just been attached to that band. That's how you identify that band.
Yeah, it just becomes throwaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Radiohead is an awesome band name because I love the band. Not because that I would think that if it was a band I'd never
funny,
heard.
band names are so interesting to me because they're mostly dumb.
Right.
But, like I think Talking Heads is a brilliant band name.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so this loops around to the name came from the song Radiohead on the album True Stories by Talking Heads. They released the first EP called Drill in May 92.
Yeah, like Talking Heads is a brilliant name. Pink Floyd is a fucking terrible name. Led Zeppelin's a terrible fucking name.
It's same with those.
Soundgarden's a terrible fucking name.
Soundgarden is no matter what, but Pink Floyd is not.
Yeah,
to me, somehow, I don't know.
I guess.
I think it's stupid if you think about it.
I have an allergy to names that are like a something something.
Yeah.
A something something. So a Radiohead.
Yeah.
A Soundgarden. I can't think of any others.
Right.
Kiddie pool.
Yeah. But
Coldplay.
Like Mothers of Invention doesn't feel that way. Mothers of Invention is great to me.
You want it to be more like the title of a book.
Something, yeah. It just feels so lazy to name a band Radiohead. But like I said, now I don't even think twice about it. It's Radiohead.
Yeah, at least it's not an animal name.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember that era?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
early
grizzly bear, grizzly bear,
it was everywhere.
Tons of bears.
I mean, there was just everything, and it was birds.
Oh yeah,
it was just all over the everything. It
those
was
things
a zoological disaster.
Those things that happen, those those cyclical things that happen, and I feel like indie rock is particularly vulnerable to this thing.
Remember the era where every fucking indie rock record had a sax solo on it?
Yes.
That was recently, actually.
I played one or two of those sax solos. But I also remember the era, too, which was also recent, where every new indie pop band was like, they were classified as dream pop or whatever.
Yeah.
And it had a female singer on a Casio.
Oh, yeah.
And the guitar player plays a Strat up on his chest. And
that's what the labels were signing.
Oh my God, it's so maddening.
Yeah.
And I know a bunch of people who make that music, and they're lovely people. I love them. But some of it was just like every day I would get hip to a new band that was that.
Yeah.
That was what they were, a duo, and that was the thing.
Yeah, they had their moment. They had their moment in the sun.
Yeah.
A lot of them came and went pretty quickly, though.
Thankfully.
I mean, which is often how that stuff goes.
Oh, I like the name Dirty Projectors just because
that's a good one.
It seems like that's like what the expression is, like what they're doing with art, to like trying to project what you, and even explaining that makes it seem kind of on the nose actually. But let's talk about Phil for a second. Phil Selway, just because we've talked about every member being curious and every member being a favorite. He's also a favorite drummer of mine. But when I think of people's advancement throughout their career in this band, I don't know if he's become a better drummer at all. It's hard to talk about because I love him and I love everything that they have on record. But when I see live stuff from Ben's era or something, he's a little like, he's not like a drummer's drummer in terms of technical ability. He's a little bit like heavy-footed. He's got a particular thing that he does. And then I think that's still there. Like in, on In Rainbows, the first track, 15 step, that's a little like not, I love it.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like him.
Yeah.
But it's not like he's been practicing drums since, because that record came out 15 years after they became famous or whatever. I love him. I think he's creative. I think he's great. But I also feel like he's benefited a lot. Like he's been open to. They added another drummer later, of course, but then just having his parts. I imagine that, and I don't know what I've read or heard that might have colored this impression, that he's taking a lot of suggestions or not necessarily suggestions, but that they're messing with his parts and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I get the sense that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I get the sense that he hasn't, I feel like he's grown as a drummer, but he's learned from the influence of Tom and probably Johnny specifically, and understood that drumming isn't always the cliched things that he probably did 20 years ago.
Of course.
But yeah, I see what you mean about him. He's the player probably who's least advanced over the years or widened over the years as the others. I could see that being the case.
Because of how creaky he is, though, I find it gives a balance to the glossy recordings.
Yeah.
Because their recordings are so pristine and modern.
Yeah.
And because the drum sounds particularly are always so slick.
Yeah.
That it's cool that he's kind of rough on some of them.
A little disjointed, yeah.
Yeah, a little. And it seems to me that they leave that stuff in for the same reason that I'm noticing. And I like that.
One of my favorite drum tracks ever is Weird Fishes.
Yeah.
That drum part is so good.
Yeah. So awesome.
And there's that one later on in Rainbows. It's the ride cymbal. He's on the bell.
All I Need? Oh, Reckoner.
Yeah, Reckoner.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
that's
I do a
incredible.
podcast about In Rainbows. I think that album is it's just what
it's
a work
brilliant.
of eloquence.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, All I Need is like such a good song.
They're all great. And it's such a romantic album.
Yeah, it is.
It's
that's actually probably, interestingly, that's the one record that I probably find most fun to listen to Phil on. With maybe the exception given to Kid A. Yeah, because Kid A has a lot of brilliant drum stuff on it, but it's still in Phil's kind of like wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Like optimistic. It still has that kind of heavy tom thing, although it's still a favorite drum part of mine.
Yeah.
But In Rainbows has so much different type of character for him. And even Moonshaped Pool comes back to older Phil style of drumming in a way. It's
House of Cards is it's like a reggae beat, or what is that?
Yeah, kind of,
because he hits the kick where the snare would be.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
Yeah. Morning Bell on Kid A is a very Phil thing, because it's like he's just, it feels like he's sort of holding on for dear life a little bit, like, because they're playing in 5 and he plays the same beat the whole song, and it's a little bit like
it's got so much character though.
Exactly. No, I love that. I had somebody say to me probably 10 years ago, a music friend, that we watched a video of this drummer named Lewis Cole. And he's got these great videos out. He's awesome. Like, he's a really, really technically good drummer, and he can play sort of like electronic sounding things live, and it's so cool. And the friend said, "Oh, if Radiohead had him as a drummer, imagine what they would be." And it's like, no, it wouldn't work.
I mean, that's like a guy who told me, "Oh, well, if the National had a different singer, they would be a much better band." It's
right.
Well, yeah, but what does that mean? Like, it's so distinctive what they do. It's like
people just can't separate. They're trying to separate a factor from the whole thing.
Exactly.
It's like if you take the eggs out of mayonnaise, it would be good. Yeah, well, what the fuck do you have?
It would be a different sauce.
It would be a different sauce.
With a different name.
So strange.
And you fall in love with the character of somebody. So if all the drum parts were even more technical and played flawlessly, there would probably be less character in the music.
Yeah.
On this record, his intro, which feels like it takes so long to happen, and so much tension builds on exit music for a film. Just that boom, bap, boom, bap, da, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
And he's like playing the cymbal with the kick drum, and it feels a little bit disjointed.
It's jagged,
So
it reminds me of Ed Blackwell. Like, Ed Blackwell, in the pantheon of like classic jazz drummers, Elvin was always the big brash guy, but like fast and loud and vicious, but also elegant, But Ed Blackwell like danced around, but he was wearing fucked up shoes, It's like he was dancing and he's dancing and he's crazy, but his shoes are all fucked up and he's kind of stumbling, but it's really amazing.
Right. It's something out of a David Lynch movie.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like somewhat disjointed.
Yeah.
And in a way, like, the stream of consciousness of a song like Morning Bell, right? And then you have his stuttering drum thing. It just kind of it wakes you up every 6 beats. You're like, oh, yeah, waking up again. And it gives you this interesting thing. And his drumming always does that to me.
Yeah.
In every song. I'm always curious what he's going to play when I hear a song start, on a new Radiohead record. I'm always curious about the drum parts.
Yeah,
I find myself less curious about Johnny. Or I'm curious about the bass. I'm always curious about the vocal melody, of course. even though Tom York can repeat himself at this point and does often, as good as it is, but I'm still curious about what Phil plays.
Yeah.
Always.
That's one thing about the live show that I didn't have an appreciation for before is Ed's part. Also, mayonnaise is a condiment, not a sauce. I said it was a sauce. But is a condiment considered a sauce? Is
I
ketchup
suppose it could
ultimately
be.
a sauce?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ed does a lot more than I thought live. You can see it.
Yeah, and he
does a lot of he does the
way
singing, and
back
he's
in
a good singer.
Yeah.
But he does a lot of that atmosphere that I thought was Greenwood.
Yeah.
He does a lot of that delayed stuff.
Right.
There's a lot of that delayed stuff on OK Computer that I think might have been him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the live show, how to make these things translate. That's a whole other discussion, too. They're great. So lyrics, Airbag is so simple, but I just remember it making such an impression on me. Some of it is kind of abstract. There's not that much. Well, I guess it's pretty visual. So, in the next world war, in a jackknifed juggernaut, I am born again. Somehow that just translated to the song for me when I was first reading this and realizing that's what he was saying. I don't know if it would be so visual if I was reading it just as a poem, but as the song with this massive intro and the world that's created and those lyrics seem so poignant to me. Whereas I think in this, if it was read as a poem, because the chorus is just in an interstellar burst, I'm back to save the universe.
Yeah, which on paper could read pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, somehow it just works so well.
This is probably the point of contention that a lot of people who don't like Radiohead have, that it's quite arbitrary. Some of that, when you're painting with words in that way, it's arbitrary, and it feels like a little bit of like the way that political debates are now.
Sure.
You just look at it and you just say like, oh well, I'm looking at it from this viewpoint, and I see it from another.
I feel like he's got to be writing on some level phonetically, right? Like, I mean, most of us do, but to some degree. But we're still working within a narrative confine, and I just wonder if from this point forward, where you had mentioned earlier, like he was writing less from an autobiographical place or a concrete place or something, that maybe he just began writing loose themes, but more phonetically, like this word sounds good, like a jackknife juggernaut sounds, even reading it as a thing, the alliteration of the J's sound nice, and jackknife juggernaut, it just has a thing, a phonetic impulse. Yeah.
Well, but those words are cool.
They're cool, yeah.
They're cool words, and that's like kind of a John Lennon thing, too, where, I mean, he was on record, I think, saying some of the stuff doesn't make any sense, but but
I am the walrus, cuckoo.
Right.
Let me get this straight, John. So I am the walrus, cuckoo, cuckoo.
Yeah.
What does that
it's
mean?
good. It's good. I like it. I like it. Good.
No, it's quite all right.
Where do you draw the line? You guys both write
Well,
lyrics.
actually, further down the lyric sheet on that is some good stuff. The image of in a fast German car, I'm amazed that I survived. That I like a lot.
It
I
all
like
seems
that whole
to tie
section
together somehow. I don't know how I'm back to save the universe, but vaguely it all paints a picture of this like demented highway, this like sort of space highway where he's flying down the road.
The same way that the drums are chopped up on that, I don't listen to the lyrics for any sense of narrative or continuity or reality. I kind of just take them for what they are.
It's imagery. Yeah,
because I don't think they're that important. There's some evocative things here and there, but that's one instance where, because I'm really into lyrics usually, but that's one instance where I just kind of let it go because it just works for me.
Yeah, it's enough. It's enough. It paints a picture, and it doesn't tell you how to live or anything, but it works very well for me.
Yeah, it's scattershot.
A friend of mine that just can't get into never could really get into Radiohead said to me at one point, like, it's just so depressing, man. Like, it's just like, why? There's just no hope in it at all. Yeah. And I had the argument that the hope is in doing it, even if this is a hopeless record, which I don't think it is, but it sounded that way to him. Even if it was there's no hope in the lyrics or in the music itself, if there's no hope at all, you don't make a record. You just, you just die, I guess. Or so that argument never.
But that's in how music affects people on a very personal level. That's like true. Some people just feel despair. I remember very specifically when I was touring in Europe with another band. I was opening for another band, and we had a driver for the tour who was driving the van. I think he was from Czechoslovakia, and he loved to put on music first thing in the morning when we had early calls, and he started driving at like 6 a.m. or something. Yeah. And his biorhythm was to have on like just completely brazen techno music, very, very loud, first thing in the morning. And he was there at the wheel, and he was just jacked, you know. Right. And it was literally the opposite music that would be inspiring or soothing to me first thing in the morning. Yeah. And this was just how this guy rolled. Like that's what resonated with him internally. Right. And he was there relaxed, and he was like, the way that I would put on Chet Baker or something like that on a morning drive, and it's just like, everything's nice. I got my cup of coffee here, got this nice music going. That was his way of doing that. Yeah. So I feel like all that stuff is kind of beyond discussion.
It is, yeah. I have that with Monique at home. Like in the wintertime particularly, I have a different routine than in the summer. In the spring, summer, and fall, I go outside for my morning coffee and cigarette. And wintertime, of course, I'm inside. So I usually go into our sort of little sitting area, and I put on a free jazz record first thing in the morning, and that shit soothes me, you know. Yeah. And to Monique, who's always dealing with anxiety or other manicness in her head, she's like, this sounds like what's in my head, and that does
too frantic.
It is not. I can't listen to this, you know.
Which is how I felt when I heard the techno. Yeah. And you know, when I listen to Radiohead, it has the effect of soothing me. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel, I guess, even joyous in a way. Sure. I feel a kinship with it. So that's comforting to me. Right. But yeah, I've had friends, lovers, all kinds who hear it and it's just like, oh, I can't do that right now. I also, by the way, I never put this on for background music, ever. Right. The band as a whole. I never put on Radiohead background music. Yeah. It's usually something I put on beginning to end, super loud in the car, right, or on headphones, right, if I'm taking a walk. Right. I almost never put them on at home. Yeah. Even when I'm alone. I don't either. And Morgan wondered about that early on, I think, because she knew it was my favorite band, and I didn't have it on very much. And I think like, she thought, you don't love it. You never listened to it. I never heard you listen to it. It was that, or I think she even maybe thought that I associated it with an ex or something, that I listened to it so much with her or something. We never really discussed that, but it seemed like maybe, but I think that's the reason. I wouldn't put it on just to have it on. I'm gonna listen. You have your own moment with it. Yeah, and I want to share that stuff with her, but we don't really sit down. I mentioned it on a previous episode with somebody recently, that trying to make her just sit down and listen to A Moon-Shaped Pool, or just lay on the bed and just listen to the whole record, and she was just thrown off. Like, we don't do this. We don't just sit down and listen to a record without doing anything else. That's not what, she just doesn't do that. You put on music and you do something else. Right. And I've been that way a lot lately, just because baby and whatever, but I much prefer, especially, I have such a reverence for this music. It feels in some way blasphemous to be ignoring it. Yeah, I can see that. I think I'm probably the same if I think about it. Yeah. Hail to the Thief has not come up in this conversation at all. Oh, I was a big fan of that record. I love that record. Yeah, oh, yeah. I love it too. Yeah. I remember that was definitely of a time. Post-Amnesiac, pre-In Rainbows. Very live album. Yeah. Yeah. Really performance. Back to rock stuff. Yeah. Knives Out. Oh, Knives Out. Oh, that's on Amnesiac. Oh, it is? Yeah. That Hail the Thief is the one where he says the raindrops like 58 times or something. Yeah, Sit Down, Stand Up. The first time I saw them, they played that song first, and it just blew my head off. Exactly, I saw that. Oh, Mixomatosis is what I was thinking. Mixomatosis is amazing. Oh, amazing song. So good. That's a great record. That record feels a little more disjointed in terms of just like a full statement. Yeah. I mean, so this can get into, I know we've already talked about what our favorites or their best record. I mean, that's an argument that people will have forever. When I've tried to decide that in my head in the past, what's my favorite Radiohead record, or what do I think based on nothing is the best Radiohead record,
it would trip me up that for this one, and even for Kid A, which was probably overall my favorite, that if I was trying to make the argument, there's Fitter Happier, which isn't really a song.
Oh, yeah, I've skipped it so many times.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It would be one that I would skip, and on Kid A, I would always listen to it all the way through, but if somebody wanted to skip Tree Fingers, I understand. It's a break. It's just a... I could see the argument for In Rainbows because it feels like a complete statement, and it also feels like all 10 of those songs could be maybe not Faust Arp though that one song.
But it's so short.
Yeah, and
it's
it
a bit of a
works.
palate
It's a nice
cleanser
song,
because it's all acoustic, and
I think it's
that might be one of my.
You'd have to
records.
answer like, what one could you not live without? Like if somebody just plopped you somewhere and said, "You've got your choice, and it's only going to be one." Which one would it be?
And you're eliminating the first two then.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it would probably be Kid A. I think.
Yeah.
You'd have to go there.
It would be between this one, Kid A, and In Rainbows. I would start there, thinking about it, and then I also thought this one could possibly be a bit long.
Yeah, this one's long too. I remember my thinking was this.
Which one are you talking about?
Okay, Computer.
Okay, Computer.
Oh, that it's long?
Just at times I'd be listening to it all the way through. I'd be a little fatigued at the end. Get to the Tourist and think, I'm ready to be done with this record. Even though I love that song.
Mm-hmm.
It's 54 minutes long.
And Kid A is about 40, 42 maybe.
42, yeah. I remember
long.
Kid A fit on a proper... I have 2 copies of Kid A, and Kid A's on a proper 33, 2 sides, or four sides of a 45. But okay, Computer was a longer record.
Yeah. When you're consuming music, when we talked about Soundgarden,
fucking bad band name.
About listening to it 30 times in the week before.
Sure, yeah.
Where was that? At home mostly? In the car? Everywhere? Here?
Everywhere. I was building the deck at my house, and so it got a lot of play there.
Yeah.
And
just playing it on your speakers at home.
Just playing it on my Bluetooth speaker at home on the deck.
Yeah.
And then never in my proper listening area at home, but out when I was building the deck, and also when I was going to the store to buy wood, I was listening to it. But these days in my life, when I re-find a record, I play it a lot. I've always been like that, though. I've always listened to music in that way.
Yeah, I had a tip recently with something I uncovered again. I can't forget what the hell it was. But yeah, I go in a wave with it. Yeah. It's just at the top of the list, and you just keep listening to it.
Speaking of Jane's and Ritual, when we bought our house and started moving, the week that we were moving into our house, I think I heard Coming Down the Mountain from Nothing Shocking on a fucking TV commercial or something, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot about Jane's Addiction. And so I listened to that record, and then I put Ritual on, and it just brought back, I went back to being 15 and all of those feelings.
It's like having a smell.
Yeah.
I mean, music is strong in that way.
So good. And it just, I've listened to that record for like 2 weeks straight, you know? And I did the same thing with Soundgarden. I did it with Kid A recently. I did it with OK Computer, I think, last summer. Yeah. So I've always been like
Does that mess you up?
No.
No,
I don't think so.
How so? Mess you up?
Just nostalgia. I don't know. I have
some bands
boxes of old photos. Sometimes I come across. If I go in there, it just like totally screws me up. It just looking at all this old shit. Yeah. Looking at old pictures of me.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Right.
You know.
Yeah. I have a hard time.
I can't do it with like Red House Painters. I can't do it. I just can't. I feel like that. And there's a particular REM record, Automatic for the People, that I adore. I can't listen to the record without I start crying by the third song because my best friend in high school, his mom died giving birth. And I was listening to Automatic for the People at the time when that happened, and it became a respite for me. Yeah. And so that song, Everybody Hurts, as fucking cheesy as it is.
Oh, that was a powerful song.
Dude, and hearing that song then when I was 14 or 15 and Jay's mom dying, and she was like she wasn't a mother to me, but she was my best friend's mom, you know, and she was a beautiful woman, and so like when we lost her, and this song became a symbol of that moment. Last year when we were in Montana, we played Automatic for the People, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And 2 seconds into Everybody Hurts, and it was just, all of it came back, you know?
Yeah,
and I love that record.
I had the feelings for that song, too. It was related to a particular time where I was hurting.
Yeah.
Side note about that song, that's a rip of Unchained Melody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it Unchained Melody that
I think
has
it
that?
is. Yeah.
I mean, I played them back to back one time, and I was like,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Everybody Hurts that was the slow dance song, too, in high school.
Right, totally.
Big time.
Holy shit. If you had a girl that was dancing with you and she got it,
Yeah.
that was emotional.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were slow dancing that song. It was like, we're alone in the world together.
Yeah,
for sure.
You understand me?
For sure. Yeah.
Jesse, I know you'll like go for a jog or something to get in a space to like really listen to something you've told me in the past, right? Do you at home, do you find time to just like put on the headphones and zone out and just really listen to something? Or
because my wife is often doing her own thing and independent. She often walks around the house with headphones on too.
Okay.
Listening to music or podcasts or whatever. She just likes being isolated in that way.
Yeah.
So I sometimes sit, but I tend to listen to music more when I'm less anxious. So it depends what's going on in life.
Mm-hmm.
By far, a favorite way to listen is in the car. Long drive, 6-hour drive, drive for an hour, beginning the drive, nothing, put on a record, play it really loud, and then no more music after that. That's how I like to do it.
Yeah, I think I liked that with CDs. Just in the car. Coming here, I hadn't had a long road trip to myself in the longest time, and the Corolla and the Bluetooth, and so it just couldn't really hang. Like, there's a lot of noise from outside, and I felt like I couldn't even. I felt like diminishing returns to keep cranking it up because it just it wasn't a joyous experience. Just got brasher and stuff. But
when you're a kid, you don't fucking care about that shit.
Just,
right, windows down.
You're
losing your hearing by the minute.
And you have obviously wonderful audio equipment, and I know you make time. You had a series going for a while of your listens.
Daily listens. I do that in the winter. I see. Just because I play records constantly in the house, but in summertime, I'm not sitting there to listen to a record as much. In the summer, I find myself, I'll put a record on and put headphones on. Like one night a week, I'll just lay in bed and I'll just close my eyes and put a record on and get lost in it.
I think that's
a nice feeling.
Way to do it. Just the headphones.
Down. And then I always end up falling asleep. Or I'll wake up like at the end of the record and that was good. And just take the headphones off and go out.
I like the daily listens thing, though, because you have comments after.
Yeah.
So you're thinking it through. I'm sure you're not thinking the whole time. You're letting it wash over you and then commenting on it. But just engaging, for me, it's been good. Not all the records have been stuff that I'm inspired by anymore, but just to listen and think about what I might say about it has been an exercise in listening more closely and not just letting music wash over me.
It's interesting at this point when you're so removed from your original emotional impulse to deconstruct what it was that made you feel the ways you did. And oftentimes they're unrelated to the music. Like there's music that I love from being 16 that I listen to now. I love it in my mind, and then I listen to it now and I'm like, oh God, I would never listen to that right now. I mean, metal's a big one, like death metal. I loved that shit when I was younger. And still on some visceral level, I love it, but I never listen to it. Or rarely, you know. There's even some pop music that I loved when I was younger that I can't bear to listen to now. But I'm far enough removed that I can, I can like deconstruct why it was that spoke to me, you know? Even The Cure, I love The Cure deeply, but I listen to The Cure now and I feel like a teenager. And it doesn't feel like adult music to me, and it's not, for all intents and purposes. And there are a couple of Cure records I can still listen to as an adult and enjoy as an adult, but I'm generally listening to them through the prism of that 14 or 15-year-old, you know, and trying to deconstruct like, oh, that's why I liked that.
Not adult in the sense that you find it to be unsophisticated, or what do you mean?
No, not at all. Just more like I can't remove myself. I can't be innocent to it anymore. I can't be vulnerable to it as an adult. Because I can't remove myself from whatever attachments I had to it at a certain time, you know. almost 30 years ago at this point. Like the first time I heard a Cure record, it was like 28 years ago.
What a sound.
Yeah,
My
no doubt.
God.
I mean, hearing for the first time like Fascination Street,
Pictures of You.
God damn.
Oh my God. When I
Talk
heard
about
that,
depressing, but that
that's-
stuff made me feel good.
Yeah, that's joyous music.
Yeah,
as far
like
as I'm concerned.
Robert Smith's most depressing, dark, fucked up lyrics made me feel good because like somebody else is feeling that shit too.
Yeah, but they were really extroverted love songs.
Oh, yeah,
Ultimately,
yeah.
a lot of them.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, it's late.
Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you,
gonna-
guys. We didn't get to lyrics much, but I mean, I think what we said about Airbag kind of covers a lot of it. Any lines that stick out to me, I think of Subterranean, Homesick Alien, all these weird creatures who lock up their spirits, drill
Yeah,
holes
that's
in
a good
themselves, and live through their secrets. It's not a totally original concept to say what would aliens think of us, but it's a beautiful way of describing that, I think.
That song, Paranoid Android, it's ambition makes you look
Pretty ugly.
pretty ugly.
Yeah.
I always liked that line.
Yeah.
And I always liked the way he delivered it.
Yeah. Oh,
It's really cynical.
I mean, that is about as concise and clear a thought as you can have, and
Yeah,
everybody knows what that means.
absolutely. Yeah. It's just straight to the point.
Yeah. If you don't know what that means,
Yeah.
it's just because you haven't seen that thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
I feel like that's an absolute truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
That if you've seen that, you can recognize.
Yeah.
the connection between the music of From a Great Height, he keeps saying that, and what the music is doing coming from where we've been in that song, rocking out, and then the music is soaring. There's a soaring wordless vocal above that, and he's saying, From a Great Height. That seems to be the connection between music and words there is just spot on.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the song that I thought was the most lyrically lazy song on the record, and it's Electioneering.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, Jay and I were talking about the fact that was apparently a
An old-
holdover.
an old- yeah.
From a former record.
I think it's clear that it's about Margaret Thatcher probably, or the Tories in general, and it's just a political.
trite.
It's trite. It's
yeah.
political. It's kind of like a predictable, anti-structure song, And I have an allergic reaction to songs like that in general.
Yeah. I think it's a cool sounding song.
Yeah, totally.
But if there's any kind of throwaway on this, it would probably be, Fitter Happier, of course. And that song, actually,
I don't even think Fitter Happier. I find that song, it's a throwaway from a musical perspective. It's like not something you'd consider as like part of the pantheon.
We don't listen to it every time, but it's important.
It's important.
Because
It's
like
true.
a
It's not a throwaway. You're
pig in a cage on antibiotics, like
right.
the stuff that's being said is really great.
No,
and
it's
I
true.
feel like
That's totally
the
true,
record
yeah.
does deal
It's a
with
poem.
themes of automation and does deal and in a way thematically, even musically, Radiohead as a band is also dealing with automation and dealing with the electronifying of their sound and the experimentation and sort of like the entering the age of the Matrix kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it does, Fitter Happier certainly serves as a kind
It
of
serves
like
the concept.
It
It
does.
really does
absolutely.
tie the concept together with the title of the record, because actually lyrically it's a bit disjointed.
Yeah.
The songs, I'm not surprised. Lucky is from something earlier. Electioneering was probably written earlier. Exit Music is written for that Romeo and Juliet. I mean, it's a dark way of looking at it, but it's clearly that song is written for that movie.
Yeah.
So they don't all fit together as a complete concept, and Fitter Happier in that voice and what it says.
I mean, I'm reading it right now, dude. It's so fucking good.
Yeah.
It's so cynical, of course, but
right.
a patient, better driver, a safer car, baby smiling in backseat. It's so ridiculous, but it's good. I mean,
It's like a computer or an alien taking in
at a better pace,
human.
slower and more calculated. No chance of escape. Now self-employed, concerned but powerless. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's true.
Less chance of illness.
Last thing, Colin is shredding in Paranoid Android, and I'm embarrassed that I've listened to it so many times, and I never realized. I was telling Logan this, that I was at my parents' house recently, and I still have freaking guitar magazines there that they somehow haven't thrown away, and I've been kind of going through them and getting rid of them periodically when we go there. But I also have a bass there. There's drums there, and there's no guitars, and I wanted to just play something, but there's a bass there, so I thought I'm going to grab one of these guitar magazines and see what's cool, and I'm going to learn a bass line from one of them. And Paranoid Android was in there, and I started going through this transcription of the bass line, and he is really playing a lot of stuff. It kind of gets buried in there. The guitars are so loud, but it's like, I can't learn this. This is real. This is hard. Yeah. I was surprised to see that because when I think of his playing, I think of the airbag and stuff. But actually, he's a busy bee on Paranoid Android at least. Thank you guys so much for doing this. We had a very long day, a very long and great and productive day of recording, and you guys really stepped up to put in an extra couple of hours with me. So. Thank you. The Isokon, special place.
Yeah,
3-star.
Productive day.
I think I'm up at 3.5 now.
I hope so. Yeah. Maybe 3.75. I don't know.
Actually, although since I misidentified a song on Kid A, it's probably
after this could be like fucking 400 1-stars.
Yeah, all the Radiohead fans.
And you and I are not. I guess you're gonna get bad ratings too. I don't have a brand name on Google Maps, so I don't know how that works.
Hey, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Good night, boy.
Good night. That's it. That's the show. Thank you to Jesse and Dan for staying up and doing that after a long day of tracking. It was really, really fun. Really makes me want to do more of these in person, which hopefully will be happening soon. Long live the Isokon. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. Listen to Antelope Running. There are already 3 singles out, if you didn't know. You can listen to right away, but the whole album will be out very soon. Dan has way more music than I can list coming out all the time, and it's all so good. djamesgoodwin.com to keep up with him. Jesse's going to be playing tour dates. He has some in Europe set up already. jessemarchant.com to keep up with all of his stuff. Thank you for listening. Once again, we're at Before the Stream podcast at gmail.com and Before the Stream on Instagram and Twitter. And if you can, rate or review, that would be so helpful. And I can't tell you what the next episode is going to be. I am not totally sure. I've got a bunch of them lined up. I have 0 of them recorded at this moment. So we'll see. I will keep you posted. It will show up in this feed in a few weeks, or I'll be posting about it on the socials. Take care out there. Talk to you soon. Bye.
So we'll cut there and then start the In Rainbows one?
These guys really don't know. They don't know Neil Young either.
I'll cut that out.
Yeah, there's that Nell Jung track thing.
Yeah, Niall Jung. Yeah, I don't want to look foolish.
Now,
I don't want to sound foolish.
Jerry Garcia played on Paranoid Android.